Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, all the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alpha Woolen, and I'm your host this evening for Inside Scoop, and I am so excited to be back. One of my favorite things about being a host here on Inside Scoop is the fact that it is a form of journalism. And as your host, I have the responsibility and privilege to provide you information on these organizations and on these people so that you can make informed decisions and have informed perspectives as consumers, as voters, as constituents, as citizens. I honestly believe that journalism, free and open journalism, is a pillar of a strong democracy. So I am really, really excited tonight to have with us the founder of PW Perspective, the premier anti-racist voice and media outlet here in Virginia. And that founder is John Reid.
Sister Alpha, it is such a pleasure to be with you tonight. And I am really excited. It's been a long time coming. I want to thank you for all the wonderful work you've been doing here at Inside Scoop. And I'm honored that you would choose me to have you here tonight.
Absolutely. So let's just go ahead. Let's let Fairfax County and all of Northern Virginia know who you are, know about Prince William Perspective. So before we get into all of that, like what's your background? Like how did PW Perspective come to be based upon your past experiences?
The amount of time it would take that would be several shows to put that together. So,
Okay.
But I'll give you the Cliff Notes version if I may.
I'll take it.
My background is basically that I'm the son of a freedom fighter. And I was always told, the truth will set others free and set yourself free. And so it kind of started me on the journey where I wanted to follow great black journalists, such as the late Bernard Shaw at CNN. There was a journalist at WGXA in Macon, Georgia, where I grew up, Mr. Silas Alexander, and I would follow him all the time, be like, hey, black guy on TV. And so I just wanted to follow. And my father would work at the post office. And right across the street was the Macon Telegraph newspaper. My dad would tell me a story when I was 2 years old. I'd run over there and I'd always want to read the newspaper. That's how I learned how to read. And I remember it just started my journey and to go into journalism. And so let's kind of fast forward a little bit, a few years if we may. And it just took me from when we moved up here in 1991. Got a chance to work with a high school newspaper where I graduated Woodbridge High School. And then I also went to Northern Virginia Community College in Woodbridge. And I was honored to be one of the first black editors on that newspaper. And so I got a chance to cover a lot of the cultural issues. One of the greatest assignments I ever had was covering the Million Man March in October 1995, and several other events that would happen in defining of black culture. And so just let's fast forward several more years. And I would say what really started me for the PW Perspective, after working in journalism for several years, I remember having a conversation with Mr. Donald Scoggins, and he was running for Board County Supervisors in Prince William County in 2019. And we were sitting outside a grocery store, and I remember he said to me, he said, John, we need somebody to speak for us. And you know how sometimes when you know you have that itch, that calling on your life, and you've been trying to run from it and all that thing, and then I realized that that's it, there's the answer. So I got into my closet and said, all right, we got to put something together. So started working on the PW Perspective. Just thought about that because the goal of the PW Perspective was to give our community the voices that have been silenced for so long. And so because we've been silenced for so long, that I said, let's give ourselves a platform, and what would it look like? And it was with the goal of saying, hey, this is not just John Reid's newspaper, it's everybody's newspaper. Everybody gets a chance to speak. So that's how we formed in 2019, and with the goal of reaching out to those communities. And then of course, March 2020 hit, and then everything changed.
Right.
But we started to see exposure, started to see the tensions begin to rise. And with that, we saw the responsibility of really speaking out for those who could not speak for themselves. And so we were honored to do that. And over the past several years, Alpha, we've been able to speak with a lot of dignitaries, a lot of political figures, and also with local communities to really amplify their voices.
That's right. And so you said Don Scott, the current...
Don Scoggins, I'm sorry. Don Scoggins.
Scoggins,
yes,
okay,
Scoggins,
gotcha.
Yes.
And so from him telling you, hey, we need a voice, we need a platform for our voices and our perspectives, that encouraged you.
It did, and one of the things, and I gotta be honest with you, I was nervous, I was scared, because in Prince William County, there are already so many different news publications. And I remember a friend of mine telling me, he challenged me, he was a good friend of mine, he said, how are you gonna get your voice heard in this county? There's 490,000 people. It's the 10th largest minority county in the nation. I said, there's a voice somewhere. There's a voice for our people, and it has to be heard. And it took a lot of work It took a lot of convincing people, hey, this is an opportunity for you to speak. So often, we often say that black voices get silenced when it comes to talk about elections, whether on the local or on the national level. Where it comes to issues of systemic racism, when it comes to issues of education, and some of these issues of attainable housing and what have you, our voices get silenced so much. So I looked at it as a challenge to say, hey, now you can speak out. This is your platform. Let it be known.
Absolutely. And so why anti-racist? I noticed that's a part of your slogan for PW Perspective. Why anti-racist?
The thing is, Alpha, see, when people say anti-racist, it shakes them to the core. See, you can avoid little terms here and there, but you say anti-racist, you got to choose a side. What side are you on? Are you on the side of justice or righteousness, or are you on the side of racism that supports the systems that hold and try to oppress our people? And so when I think about anti-racist, I like to think about it as this. You point at the system and say, hey, it's time to change. Then when you talk about ideas of anti-racism, you look at it in terms of, Ibram X. Kendi and so many authors and writers have talked about this. Ta-Nehisi Coates and others have challenged the mythology that racism is dead in America. A lot of people like to think that racism went away in November 2008. No, it did not. No, it did not. We've seen what has happened, right. and now we're seeing it more widespread than ever before. But anti-racist voices are standing up to say, hey, not only let's look at the system, let's talk about these issues, and what can we do to create fundamental change in our communities. But see, the thing about it too, Alpha, is that when people talk about anti-racist, they think about everything we're against, but no. It's about everything that we're also for. We're about black wealth. We're about black prosperity. We're about the growth of the black family. We're about black health, education, the issues that really matter to our community and the governing structure, what we mean to each other. And by doing that, we're showing the world this is what we stand for. And especially in a community like Prince William County, which has actually struggled a lot and continues to this day, with issues of saying, hey, we need to embrace our diversity. That's where we stand in the gap. And by doing so, we're letting people know that, hey, when we talk about these things, it's not to say we're pointing a finger and say, hey, oh, you're the problem, you need to solve. It's to say, hey, how can we sit down? Let's have this conversation. Let's start looking towards a solution, because that's what we are. We're solution-based journalism.
Absolutely. So it's interesting you start to talk about the history of Prince William County. From a political perspective, Prince William County was recently progressive, essentially, or not so conservative. But Prince William County has an extensive conservative background politically. Can you talk a bit about that?
Very much so, Alpha. And one of the things is that when you go back to the history of Prince William County and you look at its neighbors in Loudoun and Fairfax and others, and you find yourself to be quite shocked at just some of the very highly ultra-conservative ideologies that were placed in the county. And with this purpose of, there's been land that was purchased with the purpose of not having homes owned by black people in those areas. And that has been something that certain families had for years. And like it stated, you don't have to go very far. You can go President Obama and others, that Prince William County was still struggling with, the reason that they didn't want certain, organizations or franchise things of nature was just the concern of they didn't want more diversity coming in. Those are facts. But we started to see a shift happen several years ago, and I think it really began when you started to see people such as Victor Anger, who became the first black Neabsco Board County supervisor, and now we stand in the gap today. We have a black chairwoman, Board of County Supervisors, Chandra Jefferson. Yes. We have a black superintendent, Dr. Latanya McDade, and we have so much representation now on the boards that matter the most in communities that look like us. And so it's amazing. We have the first black mayor. You came on the show, Michelle Davis Younger, and so many voices now that look like us. And I think that what's so amazing about it is, not like I said, I've been there 33 plus years, and so I've been blessed to be able to see the transformation. And with Prince William County now not only having black leadership, but also opening more black programs, and we're seeing it now. One of the things I may add as well is we talk about some of the schools that have been changed as well. McGowan Elementary was named after George Hampton, the civil rights leader. And so we started to see so many changes happen in Prince William County. And it's amazing that you're seeing a breakthrough taking place and that we are at the forefront of it. Absolutely.
Why do you think representation is so important? There might be some people that say, well, does it really matter? Does it really matter to have a black representative for a certain district in Prince William County or Fairfax County for that matter, or any county? Does it really matter to have a black superintendent? Does it really matter to have, or a woman XYZ, or a person with different abilities in a certain, like, why does representation matter?
Representation matters because one is what our ancestors fought for. It's what they gave their lives for. It's why you and I are sitting here tonight, being able to talk about the things we can talk about freely. When you think about representation, it matters because I like to think about it like this. I was a school teacher at one time, and one of the most important things, Alpha, was when I would see my students, those young black boys would look at me and say, wow, that's somebody that's just like me. There's opportunity there to say, wow, these things can come true. Like I say, go back to when I shared what started my journey into journalism. When I saw Mr. Alexander, and I thought, wow, there's a black guy on TV, I can do news, I can do that too. It matters a lot. When they see those strong black women leading our school boards, when they see them leading in our districts, it shows those young women, hey, you can have your voice heard too. You can not only have your voice heard, you can do it, make an impact in your community. That's why it's so matter. Representation is, and it's not just, and see, people, they don't understand when you think about representation, they always think it's on the outside. No, it's what we believe. It's because we've all fought through something. We've gone through some things, overcome some things. And so when they see that, it drives them, it motivates them. They say, hey, I can do that too. So that's where representation is necessary in our communities, especially in positions of leadership.
Absolutely. Another reason, and to piggyback off of that, I was speaking, not in this platform, but a few years back I interviewed Monet Nickerson, who serves in Dumfries, and we were talking about the importance of representation. And she mentioned how the school lunch program was being scrutinized. And she was saying how there are certain people who were at the table to have these discussions that never needed that program. So it was easy for them to say that after, like, to cut out to eliminate that line item within the budget. It's not necessary. I was on free lunch as a kid, so I understood the importance of being able to have that. Actually, I had both experiences. I knew the experience of being hungry at lunch and having enough space on my card for them to poke it so that I could eat, and then I also knew how it felt when my grandmother couldn't afford at that moment for that month to pay for me to have free lunch and not being able to eat. So that's why I think it's so important to have people at the table, to have those perspectives, to be able to inform those decisions. Please make sure you don't go anywhere as we continue our conversation with John Reid, the founder of PW Perspective. You don't want to go anywhere. We'll see you in a couple of seconds.
Window. Correction, dude. You broke. I just threw the ball. This is really bad. What are we gonna do? We? Go to the door, ask for the ball back. Are you serious? It's my ball, Myrtleback. You're so dead.
I'd run away.
Yeah, to Uruguay.
Kiss your life goodbye. Sorry.
Let's go. See you, dude. See ya. You give me and you're well.
Nice life. Some friends you are.
Hi. Tell him it was an accident. And we can fix the window. Come on. I'll come with you.
Loyalty. Pass it on.
You go first.
A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about ripped off life. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Yeah. Only you can prevent wildfires. Fire.
Awkward. I'm the awkward silence. You try to avoid me, then there I am again.
But an awkward silence can be a great thing.
Like Kelly here is about to demonstrate.
You haven't really been yourself lately. Are you okay?
Find out how you can help a friend with their mental health at seizetheawkward.org.
We're back. to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
And thank you so much for joining us back here on Inside Scoop as we continue our conversation with John Reid, the founder of PW Perspective. John, when we left, we were talking about the importance of representation.
Yes.
Not only from the outside looking in so that people can see that certain seats and spaces are attainable for them, but it's also important for people who look like us and people of within marginalized communities and just different spaces and different groups have the opportunity to inform decisions and policy. And one thing that you said in the previous segment was that what sets PW Perspective apart is you said solution-based journalism. Talk a bit more about that.
Absolutely, Alpha. And one thing I would say when it comes to solution-based journalism, I put it in a simple statement. If you want to talk about a gun incident, gun violence, you go to the other papers. You want to talk about how to solve it, you come to us. Solutions-based journalism is, and we're starting to see it more, especially with more independent sources. We're starting to see more mainstream focus more on the issues themselves, not really how to solve them, especially in our communities. You know, they talk about so much about, you know, Black people communities being on welfare, even though we do know that white communities have more of it, more by percentages than Black communities, and talk about issues of housing, they talk about issues of crime and all these things, but never really talk about how to solve them. And one of the things our publication focuses on is who are the change makers that are happening or making it happen? Who are the ones that are actually going to our schools? Can I give you a perfect example? One of the things that's been happening a lot in Prince William County is a lot of Black mothers and fathers are pulling their young sons and daughters out of schools, public schools. You know, we noticed the last several years, we've seen a lot of changes that happen with the curriculum, some standards, even though with the lies of critical race theory, though we know that's not been taught in K through 12, right? Yeah. And so the fact of the matter is that what is happening is this affront is going on the curriculum, trying to remove diverse curriculums out of schools, and especially with issues of Black students getting expelled and Black and brown students at a higher rate. What we start to see is a lot of Black mothers and fathers are saying, well, I don't want my student being a part of the situation. So I've been fortunate to be able to talk to a lot of these parents, and what they're doing, they're moving them out and having the vision of micro schools. We're doing actually a series on one mother who has fought in Western Prince William County for years on some of the systemic racist issues that's been happening. And so what she's done, she started to open a micro school, the Sabona school that's coming out in September. And so we followed it because the focus is we want to see those who are actually doing something.
Wow.
You know, you don't have to go very far. Go on X, and, you know, Facebook, social media, and you hear people talk so much about, oh, this, all that, oh, you know, nothing's happening, or who's doing this for our people. Cut through all that. And we say, here are the people who are doing things in our community. Like one of the things I want to shout out Lalita Hardam, who is My Natural Me, and she has an organization that focuses on dementia resources for Black people. And so, you know, we've seen people who are making a difference in the community. I'll give another example, mental health in the Black community as well. India Daniel, she has an organization called OCTA, which focuses on mental health. As you and I know, Alpha, we don't really talk about mental health a lot in the Black communities. Yeah. We don't, because one of those taboo topics that, you know, coming up, we didn't discuss. There's some things you just said, okay, you know, you can go, you know, put some Tussin on or something, you'll be all right. No, but the reality is that we need to talk about these resources because we're dealing with things we never saw before or know how to talk about those. So one thing that PW Perspective does is say, hey, who is actually doing something about it? Think about where we're at this week. For the very first time in the Commonwealth's history, we are celebrating Black Maternal Health Week. You know, Black mothers, you know, expectant mothers are 2.9 times more likely than their white counterparts to lose their children or to die. And that's something since our inception in 2019 that we pressed and we pressed and we pressed to say, hey, and you know, we need to see this happen. So we talked about those who really fought for it, and now it's happening. So solution-based journalism works. And I want to just make a clarion call to all independent journalists to make that the focus of your publications, because when you have solutions-based, it will get people to understand that they need to see a solution to the problems. I mean, we can sit and talk all day about what the mainstream networks are talking about, but who's really looking to solve the issues that are happening in our community? And when they do, and see, can I also say this too? It doesn't matter if they're Black, white, Hispanic, it doesn't matter. Those who are making a difference, that are standing with us, those are the ones need to get the credit. They need to get their honor and the honor where honor is due. And so that's what solution-based journalism is saying who is solving the problem, and if they're not solving the problem, why not? And not be afraid to confront those. even if it's our own village, we still got to confront, because at the end of the day, it's justice that matters. Without our voice, Alpha, justice dies.
Absolutely. And I think that's one reason why people are not sure which media outlets to trust. Is it going to be slanted? Is it going to trigger them by kind of it's important for stories, especially if it's a particularly harrowing story, to get continuous news cycles. For example, the young man, oh gosh, I hope I get his name correct, but Ralph Yarrow, who was shot because he rang the wrong doorbell.
Right.
It was important that we got the word out about that.
Absolutely.
But there are some folks who say, you know what, I'm going to take a social media break, or I'm not going to look at the news, because it's triggering, and it is hard on mental health, on your mental health. That's why I think it's so important that we highlight, like you said, solution-based journalism. We know there's a problem, but who can I support? Who can I talk to that's actually contributing to the solution, and how can I be a part of that? I think more people are looking for that.
Absolutely, and I want to go back to 2020, and in the midst of the pandemic, and like I said, racial tensions were rising after the George Floyd murder, and there was an incident at the McCourt building off of Prince William Parkway. It was between Back the Blue supporters and the Fund the Police protesters, and of course, you don't have to go very far to see the racial lines that were there. Well, and a physical altercation took place, and a lot of the publications really cited from the viewpoint of the Back the Blue the supporters, that they would say, oh, these kids started it, but no one really listened to those young people. And we sat down with all four of them and said, they were on the McCourt Forum. We said, hey, tell us your story. Tell us what happened from your viewpoint. And one of the things, Alpha, I have found also with Jones that you talk about, especially with young people, they don't know who to trust when it comes to mainstream. And you don't got to go very far to see the sensationalism. I mean, I go back to what the quote, Les Moonves, the president of CBS, once said about former President Donald Trump, where he said Trump may be bad for America, but he's great for CBS.
Oh God!
And the fact is, and wherever side you lean on, I'm just saying that from an aspect of now mainstream media has gotten to the point where sensationalism rules. It is an affront to what journalism really is all about. To those great journalists who always spoke out. I go back to a quote, I should say, what Lyndon B. Johnson said about Walter Cronkite. He said, if I lost Cronkite, I lose the nation. That voice of journalism is so vital, and especially in our communities, it's so very important that our voices speak out. And so going back to my story with the McCourt Forest, when we gave them that opportunity to speak, they were so appreciative of it. But not only that, everybody else was appreciative of it. And so it kind of gave us this foothold in the community to say, hey, they really are giving us that voice that no one else will give us. And so I say that to bring it to your point, is when it comes to news that we can trust, the most important thing is this, is it relatable? Is it something that really hits to the heart of what you're going through? And so you don't have to deal with a situation, you don't have to have that 1 degree of empathy to understand, but understand the purpose, understand what our focus is that this has a long-term benefit to what we say and what we do. And by doing so, we hope to build that trust with people.
So what is your approach to journalism when it comes to building out your content for Prince William Perspective? How do you write all of the articles, or do you have contributors, or do you scout? Like, what is your approach?
First and foremost, I want to shout out my amazing team for making this process. I want to shout out Marlena Stevens. I want to shout out Queen McLean, Lita Hart. I want to shout out those who were with us in the past, Ada Sakis, Langston Carter, and so many others who have worked with us throughout the years. We have a lot of contributors, and some who are political figures as well, lend their voices to us. And one of the things we're so thankful for is for people, and we said this from the beginning, it's not my newspaper, it's everybody's. And so we invite people to say it, because that's what you want to see. Community-based journalism, that's what it takes. I mean, we have seen, you've heard the term citizen journalism.
That's right.
And with the transformation of citizen journalism and what it did, especially in the early 90s, we first started having cameras and things of that nature. And so what we do is, our approach to our journalism is simply this, is what's the problem, how can it be solved? And if it's not being solved, who do we point it to? And if they're not doing anything about it, call them out on it. And some people, we challenge everyone. And those very same people we challenge, they'll come back and say, hey, you know what? We appreciate what you did. Now, it takes some time now. Some people, feathers have to be ruffled a little bit, but that's all part of fighting for justice. That is our responsibility. So our content is always focused on the solution. We point to that and say what paths we take. That way you cut out, separate the wheat from the chaff. That way you cut out all the filter, cut out all the sound bites, all the hot takes, and we say who is doing what to solve this problem in Prince William County. And as we do that, then people understand, okay, there's no fluff, there's no mess here. We are having this conversation. And that's really what the point is. It's not just to say, hey, here's the information, the 5 W's and the H. It's to say, hey, let's sit down, let's have this conversation. Let's talk about this issue. One of the biggest issues in Prince William County right now is attainable housing. And we're finding people in Prince William County who say, I just can't live here. If you're 27, 28 years old, you just graduate from college or maybe just moved to the area, you look at the housing prices, you think, I can't afford to be here. And that's one of the most important things. So we're finding a lot of Black and brown first-time home buyers saying, I'll go down to Stafford. And hey, shout out to my people in Stafford County, but at the same time, and they want to be able to work and live close to home.
Sure.
And for educators, that has a really big impact because you want to be able to work and live where you teach. And so that's one of the biggest things. So one of these we've really been focusing on lately. And so getting people to understand that by taking that approach to being the content problem solving aspect, then it gets people to wake up and say, okay, wow, we need to talk about this issue.
Yes. And within your publication, you have something called Voices of a Generation.
Yes. As we stated earlier, Alpha, we are our ancestors' dream, what you and I are doing here. And I've been so honored to talk with so many wonderful people. And I try not to emotion. I think about the late Albert Brooks. He had first started working with the late A. Philip Randolph. He learned under him. He had a story where he was actually throwing some rocks at some boys, and a man stopped him. That man was Malcolm X, and then encouraged him and told his father, hey, he needs to get out of this neighborhood. He went to Detroit, worked under Reverend Franklin, whose daughter happened to be Aretha Franklin.
Wow.
His life was so impactful in Prince William County. Him and former Vice Mayor Willie Toney. I was the last person to interview him. And he had such a profound impact. And so we made it our mission at the Be There Perspective to interview and give the others their flowers, because their voices need to last through generations. Long after we are gone off this earth, their voices ring, the lessons they teach. And so I've been honored to talk with them some more. And so one of the things I really look forward to with the Voice of Generation is saying, hey, we appreciate what you've done for us. We appreciate what you've done and what you'll continue to do for generations going forward.
Wow. I can't wait to come back from this next segment. Please make sure you don't go anywhere to continue our conversation with John Reid, the founder of PW Perspective. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you right after these messages.
Okay, so we drowned the fire, stirred it, drowned it again, and now just feel if it's cold.
Yeah.
Cool.
Smokey just gave me a bear hug.
I know. I already posted it.
I got a creak in my neck, limp in my step, cramping in my muscles every time I try to flex. I don't know why I'm scared of. All that I can do was remember you. You know I usually stay now, but if you throw me love, I'll throw you some more.
It's a big responsibility.
Oh, it's huge. I know, it's huge.
And the salary.
Oh my god, yes. I mean,
Right?
like, I was about to move in with my parents, and right before, so this saved me.
I really believe in you,
Thank you. It's nice to hear that from someone.
These are cool. Did you, what did
to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Thank you so much for joining us back here on Inside Scoop as we continue our conversation with John Reid of the Prince William Perspective. So John, when we were, right before we left off, you were talking about the segment within Prince William Perspective, or PW Perspective, that focuses on, you said, to give the older voices within our community their flowers now.
Absolutely.
I think that's so important. I think anyone who knows me, not I think, I know, anyone who knows me, they know how much I love my grandmother. My grandmother, she will be 98 in November. She's the one who raised me. And listening to her stories, they have, her life and her stories have contributed to who I am. They help me understand why I do the things that I do, why my decision making is the way it is. So to your point of writing these stories and telling other generations so that they have something to look back at and something to inform their decisions going forward. I think that's so important. So let's continue in that vein.
Indeed, and that's one of the things I love about Voices of a Generation, and I want to shout out the amazing work that Queen McLean helped in making that possible. And one of the things with Voices of a Generation, like you said, and we get to hear so many stories, and I like to consider myself a historian, learning again and again under the feet of my father, and who taught me so much about Black history and the roles that Black men and women played in shaping our history and our culture today. And one of the things I've been fortunate, blessed to do is be able to talk with so many figures, the people who have made differences in our community. Again, talk with Mr. Scoggins, who was encouraged without him raising, we don't know where we'd be today with the PW Perspective. Like him, Mr. Tony, Mr. Brooks, and so many other figures who have, we give them that space. And one of the things that I really am looking forward to with Voices of a Generation to continue it on even further is being able to just say to them, hey, we want to honor you. We want to be able to hear this, not because, just because the life you live, but what lessons we take from it. As I'm sitting behind the camera and Queenie's doing the interviews, I'm writing down notes. I'm putting notes together because I want to be able to take something in from it and say, hey, I can gather from that. And that's what we want other people to understand. We want younger generations to understand, Alpha, this is for you. Because we know so much history can get lost so very easily when it comes to voices and books and things of that nature. And when things become more digitized, what we want to do is be able to say, hey, take something from this written word. And when you take something from the written word, it goes down to so many people. And if you get just a kernel of it, you can take it and share it with somebody else. So that's what we love about Voices of a Generation.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. There is something, I believe that words have power, especially spoken words. But when you can look at something, a word or words or an account or a narrative that's a voice from the past, it's and it puts you right there in that space. It informs your decisions, it informs your decisions and your perspective going forward. I always do some digging on my guests. So I went to your website, and there was one, it was a recent article actually, that really caught my attention. And the title of that article is Personnel Changes Coming to Virginia GOP After a Post Attacking the House Speaker. And the Republican Party tweeted, is it any surprise that Don Scott, they added him, Don Scott 757 spent 8 years in federal prison for peddling drugs to college kids, and now he's obsessed with legislation to cut breaks for drug dealers. Anything for your buddies, right? And so the GOP, they responded and said they were going to make some personnel changes because it doesn't reflect the party and it doesn't reflect the principles that they stand for. And we could debate that all day long, right? But I just think that person who posted that on X, they used that dog whistle of associating Black people with drug dealers. But just for a quick commercial, I did do some research on that because you said something earlier about there being this perspective, this narrative that there are, especially within the Black community, that Black people sponge the system essentially. Right. And then you have this similar dog whistle. But I went to Human Rights Watch and it says that most drug offenders are white. 5 times as many white people use drugs as Black people, but Black people comprise the great majority of drug offenders sent to prison. the solution to this racial inequity is not to incarcerate more white people. That's not the solution. The solution is to reduce the use of prison for low-level drug offenders and to increase the availability of substance abuse treatment. This is that solution-based journalism that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
When there are narratives out there about specific groups, whether they are Black, white, Latino, men, women, pro-life, pro-choice, whatever, when people use dog whistling and yellow journalism and sensationalism, it creates hatred. And that's why you have people that are scared to go vote. That's why you have issues like the insurrection that happened on January 6th. So I commend your very brave solutions-based journalism. So now I want to ask you, what are some of your more memorable stories or content that you've created and the stories behind them?
Well, Alpha, my content's like my babies. They're like my children. You know, I mean, you can't choose just one. But for the sake of time, and because we're on television, I'm going to go ahead and just give a few for the audience. One of my favorite ones was The Sin of Love Candles. It was by a young man named Alejandro. He's a 14-year-old entrepreneur. He opened up his own store in Tyson's Corner 1. And one of the things we love is just giving young entrepreneurs a voice, an opportunity to speak. And that's one of the things that really touched on me, just seeing his journey, how he started from beginning, and he's been featured all over television, and just to watch where he and his family came from, it was such a powerful story. And the vision behind that, Alpha, was just to give young entrepreneurs, say, hey, you can do this too. You know, you don't have to wait. You know, if you got a vision, jump on it, make it happen. And even if you need to find the resources, we'll help you get there, because we like to partner with them. You know, there's places like the Black American Market in Potomac Mills, you know, places that, you know, Black businesses come and say, hey, we have a place here. That story really touched home with me. Another one is when we did a story on, matter of fact, it was the first documentary we filmed last year with Maritza Gabriel, and she has a story of Enough Cries, where it talked about her story of overcoming domestic abuse to become a voice and become an organization that focuses on helping people, both men and women, with domestic abuse. We did a 7-minute documentary on her story, how she overcame it. And I mean, and it's hard because you're sitting behind the camera, you're not trying to get emotionally caught up in it, but to watch what she did and how she lived it, and even with the instance as we played it out, it was just so powerful. And so being able to do that, I thought really meant to me. But I gotta admit, you know, the number one story is always is the one I have with my father. And it's funny because, you know, I've talked to my dad for all my life, and so being able to actually interview him was just an amazing opportunity to learn about his history as a freedom fighter. Learn how you talked about earlier about fighting for the right to vote, for Black orphanages to get resources, and the things he's done that and continue to do a voice for Black community. That to me just touched my heart. And I've been blessed to talk with, you know, Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears. I've been able to talk with people at Fairfax, and so many other, you know, government officials, you know, Jennifer California, so many other people who have run and made a difference in the office. But if you give me the one, it's got to be the one my father. That's the one that'll last me forever.
Wow, because he was your father. You said that he was a freedom fighter.
Yes, he was. Wow. Yes, and he actually fought in the 1960s during, you know, with the Freedom Summer, and also he was fighting for the right to vote. Whether it's at Savannah State, he talked about like instances where he dealt with abuse from cops, where he dealt with racial abuse, where he was one of the first 10 black students to integrate Bibb County schools back in 1964. And so he talks about these journeys, and it really inspired me. I read some of the books that he would study as a child, and I would ask him a whole bunch of questions. You know, we used to have the World Book encyclopedias, and I would pull out every time and be like, hey, Dad, what is this? And I would sometimes wake him up in the middle of the night because I can't sleep, and I still can't. So I would ask a whole bunch of questions. But it really inspired me, Alpha, because it helped me to see that, wow, you know, we really need to stand up for what we believe in. And so I was so thankful to learn under his feet and the feet of so many others that came away, both men and women who set the way. And if I may share another one too.
Yes.
Mr. Albert J. Williams. He's 82 years young, I believe, and he is an actor. He was on Cotton Comes to Harlem. He was at Glory. He was in so many great movies. But he lived in Prince William County, and he talked about the history of Prince William County, how some of the land was segregated. And so, but talking with Mr. Williams gave me an understanding of what's it like just to kind of overcome some of the segregation in Prince William County and really bring it home for me. And so, yeah, there's a lot of amazing stories, a lot of amazing people, and I feel we've only touched the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the stories in Prince William County, there's so many more. So if you give me a Mount Rushmore of those stories, I would say those definitely are up there.
Gotcha. You know, it's interesting. So Councilman John Chapman, he is, he owns Manumission within the city of Alexandria. And so hearing you talk about the importance of history and all that you've learned, all that you're sharing with other people, and how it has impacted you, just underlines the importance of journalism, of writing the story, of sharing the narrative. It's how, again, I said it before, I said it at the beginning, and I said it in other parts of the show. It helps inform your perspective going forward, and I think that's this underlines why we need to continue to make sure that history is reported and taught accurately. We can't pick and choose parts of history that make us feel comfortable. I'm not talking, there's a difference between removing monuments that seem to underline hurtful parts of our history. There's a difference between not making monuments up, not creating monuments to celebrate these people, and outlawing truths. I remember when I was in, I think I was in middle school, and I still remember the picture of Nat Turner. He looked like a demon. I remember being like, what, 12, 13, looking at this picture and thinking, what an awful man. I remember thinking that Nat Turner was an awful, evil man for doing what he did. They painted him as a murderer, not the truth. I'm a black child. So I think, again, that just, but I'm glad I went to an HBCU. Shout out to Hampton University, the real HU.
That's right. Shout out to the Pirates. Let's go.
That's right. But I think that just to your point of telling the truth and sharing these narratives and not being afraid to speak the truth and offering solutions in sensitive spaces.
Absolutely. And I want to go back to something you just mentioned a moment ago, Alpha. When you talked about the aspect of what it means to being able to be in those spaces. And I want to shout out all the amazing HBCUs, of course, definitely Hampton University, and also I have to say from my wonderful wife, Shaw University as well, because she mentioned that. But I think what's so beautiful is when you start to see our narratives is pushed. Let's be honest, you know, you and I grew up, we watched A Different World. You know, we see recent tour.
That's right.
And one of the things I'll just say is so beautiful is being able to see that we can be free in our own skin. So we see these narratives, even though they're painted now, we now have a chance to tell the truth of our history. So it's more about monuments, it's about memories, and memory momentum. So we're so glad we can do that.
Absolutely. It's not about monuments, it's about memories.
Yes.
I like that. So make sure you come right back as we finalize our conversation with John Reid.
Hi. Hoping for a crisp breeze to help keep you alert? Oh, he took a sip of water too. That'll probably help. You were probably gonna turn down the radio too, so you could focus, right?
Probably okay isn't okay.
Right?
If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend.
I think the water line is what really drove it home. I blew on him.
What's wrong with the world, mama? People living like they ain't got no mamas. I think the whole world's addicted to the drama, only attracted to things that'll bring the trauma. Yeah, madness is what you demonstrate, and that's exactly how anger works and operates. Man, you gotta have love just to set it straight. Take control of your mind and meditate. Let your soul gravitate to the love, y'all.
People killing, people dying, children hurt and you hear them crying. When you practice what you preach, you turn the other
Ma'am,
cheek.
you forgot your purse.
Oh, you don't know how worried I was. Thank you very much.
Hey.
Honesty. Pass it on.
Nice move, kid. Donut?
A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
When I was your age, I was just like you, fascinated by stars.
Wow.
But now I get to search for life in the universe. And who knows, maybe life is looking for us too.
So we're like aliens to them?
Yeah. Does anyone want to be a scientist now?
I do.
Awesome. We need more girls in STEM.
Maybe we can find aliens.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
And thank you so much for joining us back here on the Inside Scoop. I was having such a wonderful time talking to John during the break. I forgot that you all were there. John.
No, we're just having a conversation, America. We're having a village conversation here.
That's right. So, okay. So, Prince William Perspective, you've had some pretty prominent folks featured in your content. You've had elected officials, you've had candidates. I recently read about, you recently wrote about Diana Brown.
Yes.
She's a candidate? She's an upcoming
absolutely.
candidate?
Okay. And we got a chance to talk with her outfit last week. And one of the things that her story is about is in Manassas City Public Schools. If you look across it, it's very homogenous. But here's the kicker. Manassas City Public Schools is 7,700 students, 69.9% Hispanic, not one Hispanic board member. It just boggles the mind. So I got a chance to talk with Diana and talk about her amazing story. She's been in education for 20 plus years, worked in special education, and worked as a multi-language learner. Her story comes from Honduras to the Bronx, and then coming down here, she was assistant principal of the year in Hampton, Virginia Beach area, and so she came up to Manassas, and she's one of those that talked about she works in Fairfax County Public Schools, but she has to live in Manassas, can't afford working, so that's another situation. Hey, let's pay our teachers, y'all. Let's pay our teachers, and so when I got a chance to talk with her and her story, and it's just really powerful because I think about in Manassas, because people think about, oh, we're doing Prince William County, it's all eastern Prince William County. No, it's all of Prince William County. It's Marcus, Brentsville, Gainesville, all that, Nokesville, and in Manassas. And I used to go down Georgetown South a lot, where we were told not to go, especially in the 90s. But I want to shout out Mayor Michelle Davis Young and the wonderful people who have actually made that what it is today. It's gotten much better. But people like Diana Brown who are really trying to run for office, and just to hear her story, and just to be able to encourage people to say, hey, you need more representation. Go back to what we talked about earlier. And so one of the things that really just related to me and really touched me was when she talked about just some of the struggles she had to overcome to get there, and being in that space now where she's on the board at Northern Virginia Community College, and so many wonderful things she's doing. And when you talk a lot of these candidates, and you kind of find different avenues, because for a lot of these people, I love talking with first-time candidates, especially younger candidates who are just getting into for the very first time, and they find themselves. I find myself being often their first interview, and I find that it's still an honor, because I'm gonna tell you, when we first started October 2019, I would ask people, politicians, say, hey, can we come on? Can we talk to you? They would just wave me off and keep it moving. Those very same politicians now have me text me on my phone and say, hey, John, can you please do something for us? And so your gift will make room for you. And so, but being able to talk with such wonderful people, and I want to say this too, that it's nonpartisan. So we talk with people on all levels, Republican, Democrat, Independent. Talk to people like Terrace Todd, like I said, the Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears, Jennifer Carroll-Foy, and Mayor Michelle Davis Younger, Mayor Derek Wood, Vice Mayor Nickerson, and so many. They don't have enough time. So many wonderful politicians, people, and you come to find the same thing. When it comes down to the root, they all want to serve. They really want to help their community, and even sometimes the ideology might be a little bit different than what our community expects. We got to push back and say, okay, how does this help us? Because at the end of the day, I have responsibility to our community. I have responsibility to our community and our people who have been silenced for far too long. And so I'm thankful for these public servants who take the responsibility to speak out. So yeah, we've been really blessed in those avenues, those spaces.
And I think it's important. I think it's important that PW Perspective is nonpartisan. I think it's important within our community that we have the best decision that you can make is an informed decision.
Absolutely.
The best perspective that you can have is an informed perspective, whether it's from the right, the left, or the center of the aisle. Absolutely. So I appreciate that PW Perspective offers just that. So also, you have a recent article where you interviewed Senator Kane's Stand Up for Virginia?
Yes, for his re-election campaign. Yes, we were fortunate and thank Mayor Derek Wood for the opportunity. We got a chance to speak with Senator Kane and really talked about the issues that he's faced with attainable housing and also some of the issues faced with the budget situation with the General Assembly and sadly some of the things that have been vetoed. I think it's been a record. The governor vetoed 153 bills, if my memory serves me correctly. And so we talked with Senator Kane and some about his campaign and really reaching out. He's reaching out to our community, especially with Latin Prince William County, and some of the things that he was doing. And one of the things I was thankful for was when we got a chance to talk with him is an opportunity to say, hey, Senator Kane, what is actually being done? What is actually being done that people can put their faith and trust in you? And that because voters, like you said, voters don't know if their vote matters. And I wear this band that says Black Voters Matter. It does. And so we want to give people like Senator Kane and others the opportunity to speak, but don't ignore our communities.
That's right.
No, we matter. And you have to be able to say, hey, I'm going to be a voice for you and I'm going to speak out for you and introduce bills and legislation that will make the difference in our communities, that will put money into those communities, that will be able to give us the resources that we need in order to have sustainability of life.
Absolutely. I love that you have Black Voters Matter. I think it's important to let the world know, let all Americans know that Black voters matter. But I think sometimes our community, we need that reminder too. I know that I could name at least 5 people within my close friends and family that are not registered to vote. And I think it just goes back to what you said as far as people understanding that their voice matters and their vote does matter, but it's every individual's responsibility to amplify it. If you have the opportunity to vote, you have to do that.
Absolutely. And the fact of the matter is that you got to let your voice be heard because at the end of the day, it's not about trees, not about lights, not about algorithms. It is about, do you get into that voting booth? And can I also say this? Do it also during the midterms.
Yes.
All right. Don't just be waiting because of all the news on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It is in your school boards. It is with your board of county supervisors. It is with your mayoral elections. It's with your vice mayor elections. It's with your sheriffs. All right. And there was a vote, and I won't say it for the sake of time, but there was to say one sheriff lost a vote by 16 votes.
Wow.
16 votes. It makes all the difference.
It does.
You can go to the Prince William County Detention Center. It makes all the difference.
It does.
Your vote does matter. And I always say to my brothers and sisters in the village that when it comes to voice, ask yourself this question. Politics is not about the person who gets you everything you want, but who gets you closest. Who gets you closest to that goal? And then some things you can negotiate. But what are the absolutes as well? The things that you can say, okay, these are my absolutes. These are things I could probably, I can pull back on. But let your voice be heard. Get in that voting booth every time you have an opportunity. Because that's what our elders fought for us to do that. And for future generations, they're watching us. They're watching what we do.
Quickly, can you tell us about the PW Perspective Annual Awards?
Absolutely. We hosted this year. We're going to be hosted November 13th in Huntington, Virginia. And shout out, we're working in partnership with my natural media organization as well as the Business Crossing Network by Lita Hardum. And it's where we're going to give the best in businesses, philanthropic operations, nonprofit organizations. And we're really excited about that opportunity coming up.
And so you feature small businesses or?
Yes, any type of Black-owned business, big, small, large, doesn't matter, startup, doesn't matter what it is, online. We recognize junior entrepreneurs, we recognize the creative, the arts and the creatives. If it's part of Black culture, you get recognized that night. And so we're doing it live this evening. We used to do it one day. This year we're going to have a banquet and we're going to have the actual show program afterwards. So that is November 13th. We're really excited about having that. We're going to put more information on the PW Perspective on our Facebook page, Instagram, and also on our website.
And I'm glad that we segued into that. So what can people do to subscribe, to support, and contribute content to PW Perspective? We're
not in this alone. It takes all of us. We need the resilient voice. The voice that says, I'm tired. The voice that says, I need to find a solution. The voice that says, I just need to speak out. Sometimes we just need to face and rant. We just need to face it, hey, I just need to let this be heard. The PW Perspective is for you. If you are a resilient voice, come out, join us, join our mission. We cannot do this alone. You want to see change? Change does not happen alone. It is in a community, it's in a village, it's a oneness that we have to have. So go onto our website, www.pwperspective.com, email us at pwperspective@gmail.com. Let us know. If you have a story, no matter how large or small, we want to hear it because you matter.
Absolutely. I have really, really enjoyed this conversation, John.
Thank you.
It has, like you said, it's been a long time coming. Yes. I'm looking forward to the additional content and the stories that you're going to have. And I know one day I'm going to hear you on Sirius XM. I'm going to see you on CNN. So I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so we're coming to my favorite part of the show. And I think the show's producer as well. Either or. So I'm going to ask you some questions. You can give one-word answers if you want to, but we have 3 minutes, so we have a little bit of time. You can give a short anecdote related to your answer.
Can I say before we answer?
Okay.
I want to apologize for any answers I give out to anybody that are offended in these answers.
Okay, we'll take it. Okay, what historical figure, no longer with us, would you like to interview?
Ooh, Jesus.
Okay, we'll take it.
I would like to interview and ask one simple question. Were you truly born of a virgin? Everything else falls in line because of that, whether it's true or false.
Wow. Okay. That's a deep question. I'll take it. Okay, so next question. Are clowns so funny that they are scary, or so scary that they are funny?
See, that's a triggering question because clowns and I don't get along. Had a little incident at 5 years old. Parents took me to a circus one time, saw one with a big red nose. Yeah, we're not doing that. My brothers would taunt me because they had my brothers would buy a clown mask, my older brothers, and you know who you are. And they would put one in my bed when I was sleeping and see, yeah, triggering. And so, yeah, it took a little time, a little forgiveness, but yes, clowns, yeah, not doing clowns.
Not doing clowns, okay. Okay, next question. Which would you rather encounter in a dark alley, a vampire or a werewolf?
You know, I love dogs. So werewolves, you know, I can roll with a lycanthrope, you know what I mean? You know, I saw Twilight, okay? So, you know, I can roll with a dog. You know, a little bone here and there, a little scruffy. I'm gonna go with the werewolf because, see, if I see a vampire, the problem is, you know, the vampire can come out at night. They're gonna look at a brother and be like, hey, you know, I can chase you down, and they can have mist, they can turn to all kinds of forms. I'm not trying to mess with a vampire. No, I saw a vampire in Brooklyn. No, we will not be doing that, okay? No.
I don't know, I think you might have a chance with Eddie Murphy. I'm not sure.
I mean, you know, unless he turned back to that version of Al Sharpton he did at the church. But no, other than that, I don't know. Nah, nah, I'm not messing with a vampire.
Okay. Who was your favorite Cosby Show character and why?
Ooh, okay, since I was the youngest of my family, I'm gonna say Rudy for this simple reason, because I know what it's like to be the youngest. I know what it's like to not have your voice being heard. So, and I think about that because, you know, and being the precocious individual that Rudy was, I gotta say it was her. And just simply that, knowing that relationship, because my parents were Cliff and Claire, okay? My dad is as chill, and my mom was the one who kept 4 boys in check, and she had to. You know, my dad, you know, was as calm, but when he would speak, he kept in line. But when mom spoke, yes, ma'am.
Okay, last question. Which one item on the family cookout menu, what is one item on the family cookout menu that requires prior approval?
Oh, the barbecue chicken. The barbecue chicken. At the end of the day, we got to have it. You know what I'm saying?
Not the potato salad?
Oh, the potato salad, no, they got to have some seasoning in it. You know what I'm saying? But the barbecue, we got to have the barbecue chicken.
We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Have a great night.